Hello and welcome to yesterday's airlines. There has been big news over the last week or so in relation to a new brand that has appeared in 400 scale and 200 scale as well, and what that means for the scale as a whole. I feel like there is a lot of potential here, but also it could all be quite messy and disruptive. What am I talking about? I'm talking about HX models, which was previously YY wings or blue wings, depending on who you speak to and what time of day it is. It's an interesting story, a developing story, one which I've been learning more and more about this week. So I thought it seems like the sort of story which could become really important in the scale and something which I think is worthy of a bit of investigation. So in this post, I want to look at who HX models are, what they are doing, and why it matters to you as a collector. So that's what we're going to have a look at in this video. Stay tuned for that. But before we do, obviously, chuck a like on the video if you're enjoying the content and subscribe to the channel. Check me out at Yester Airlines on Instagram and Facebook, and yesterdaysairlines.com, where I report on this kind of thing all the time. Indeed, I first spoke about YY models, the precursor to HX, in January at the site. So you got to pay attention to all my channels to keep up with the latest news. But let's get on and have a look at who HX models are. Okay, so it was around the end of last year, late 2023, when it was becoming more obvious that there was a new player in 400 scale. There had been these Blue Wings Antonovs in interactive versions floating around for a while before that, and people had been seeing those, but they hadn't been causing a great deal of notice, certainly not outside of China anyway. But around the end of last year, new 747-8s started appearing on the market, made by a company which seemingly was calling itself YY Models or YY Wings. It's a little hard to know. And they were producing these 747-8Is. They produced Lufthansa and Air China versions, and they came both in flaps up and flaps down. And as I say, I reported on these at the site in January, and I actually managed to acquire one from China, and I have reviewed that model at the site as well. So if you haven't seen these previous posts and you haven't checked out that review, then please do so. I'll chuck a link in the description of the channel here for this video. The models are quite impressive. The molds are good. They're not spectacular, but they're pretty high standard. The 747-8 mold, it looks really good. It has generally all the features you'd expect from a modern 400 scale aircraft, aerials, rolling gears, see-through fans, all of that sort of stuff. Some of the detailing wasn't quite as good. The wing join was the primary issue with these 747-8 molds, but it was a very good mold. The big thing that made it stand out, perhaps, is that A, that these guys just seem to appear out of nowhere, and B, that the price of the models is substantially lower than standard 400 scale. These are retailing in China for much cheaper than you would be getting 747-8s from other brands like Gemini or JC Wings or Phoenix or NG. They're retailing for around the 200 RMB mark. So it was cheap, and it wasn't expensive for me to acquire that 747-8 either from China. Very few of these seem to have gotten outside of China, though they have been appearing on eBay, and the biggest source of these outside of China is My Hobby House, who seem to have a reasonably strong relationship with these guys at HX models. My Hobby House seem to have their fingers in most of the pies in relation to brands and have strong relationships with most of them. Suddenly, there was a new player on the market with a new mold seemingly coming out of nowhere, producing some very high quality 400 scale models, but at a very cheap price, or relatively cheap price. That was YY Wings, or YY Models. They also had those Antonovs, which they were calling Blue Wings, and there were some Blue Wings 737-700s that were using Panda Models molds as well, that they were also made. I've got a couple of those there, Air China and things like that. So these two brands kind of seemingly being sold through the same platforms and have some relation. And this has been developing gradually as the year has moved on. Just recently, it's been made known that they have decided to rebrand. The 400 scale side of their business has now been changed. So you won't be seeing the brands YY Wings or Blue Wings anymore. Instead, now they're going to be calling themselves HX Models, which apparently stands for Huia Jia Models. I think that means something like Grand China Models or something like that. And that is how they're going to be branding their 400 scale. They are also working in the 200 scale space. And in that space, they're going to be calling themselves SQ models, I believe, which I think may stand for something rubbish like super quality models. But nonetheless, they seem to be expanding in both of these directions. And the latest product that HX Models have announced is the 747-8 Freighter, so a different mold. And this again is that version wherein the green pre-delivery, I've been told off for calling it primer, but I'm going to call it primer anyway. That kind of primer-esque green pre-delivery scheme, which has been made recently by NG Models and JC Wings. So they've got a direct competition aircraft model release here with those JC and NG releases. Now that aircraft is available now, I believe, and again it will be available at places like My Hobby House, and it's available in China. I don't think that there are any Western retailers that are stocking these at the moment, but it seems unlikely that that will be the case, and I would expect that there will be more of these being seen in the West, and I'd be surprised if they didn't find some distribution pathways to Western retailers. But as of yet, I don't know of any. My Hobby House is as out of China as things are getting, though I expect there will be some on eBay. Again, the mold here looks really good. When you look at the pictures of the aircraft, all of which come with stands incidentally, then the model looks really nice. It looks like it's got all the sort of details you'd expect. It's got high quality paint and print. It's got the panel lines on it like the JC Wing version did and the NG didn't. Once again, you've got to say that the wing join isn't ideal around the front of the wing there, where the wing meets the fuselage. It's not correctly formed. It's not this right shape. It's more like the sort of wing join you get on the Phoenix version. But the model overall looks very impressive. And again, it should be retailing, I believe, for a significantly cheaper price than standard brands. So it does seem that, at least at the moment, HX Wings or HX Models or whatever they're calling themselves are going to be able to undercut other brands in the scale and deliver models at a significantly cheaper price. Now, whether, again, if they actually get these things to foreign retailers, whether those prices can remain the same when they're distributed globally, I don't know. But it certainly seems that in China and just outside here, and the way these are dribbling out onto the market, that they can. So this is really interesting for me. They've got a whole new brand with new molds, high quality, low prices. Now, I've been doing some digging on who these guys are, and what I've discovered to date is that they're based out of a factory that previously had an agreement with JC Wings, and it has, how shall I say it, taken JC Wings by surprise that this has happened. Apparently, the agreement they had with JC was terminated. There was some suggestion that they were going to stop making models. And then all of a sudden, they start up their own brand. So it's definitely taken JC Wings by surprise. And I also, as I understand it, JC Wings are not happy about this, because they believe that not only have these new guys been able to get a jump start by looking at and using JC products as the basis for their operation, but they've also been available to access components and paint and things like that. And basically that's one of the reasons that they're able to get these new molds built reasonably quickly and have access to the high quality materials that they've used. So JC Wings, I believe, is really angry and may even be looking at legal action. Quite what that means in China, who knows? And I'd be very surprised if it had a dramatic impact on what HX Models are doing. But that is my understanding nonetheless, that this is an ex-JC Wings factory that effectively broke with JC Wings and then decided to go out on its own, producing its own models. Now, the marketing spiel is that it's driven by a group of young aircraft model enthusiasts dedicated to producing high-quality models at affordable prices. But as far as I'm aware, it is a factory which is broken from JC Wings and is now making models for itself. And I don't know the ins and outs of that any more than I've said, so who knows what the truth is. It's always very incestuous die-cast model making in China. I don't think people quite understand how closely related all the companies are. Everyone knows everyone. There's a lot of this kind of backstabbing and intrigue that goes on, and it's very hard to find out the truth. But nonetheless, HX Models seem to have emerged from this in 400 scale with these new models. Not only that, their second announcement, which they've just announced, is, and this kind of puts the cat amongst the pigeons even further, is going to be a 747-100, so another new mold. And this 747-100 is going to be the same model which has been announced as the NG Lite version by NG Models. So it's the 747 prototype N747-0 in exactly the same scheme. But obviously this is going to be coming with aerials on a new mold, which is still going to be the same price as the NG Lights, presumably. So that is really interesting. And JC Wings have literally just stepped into the same space by announcing they are also making N747-0 themselves, but their version is going to be coming with GSE, with a GSE set. So it's really interesting. I feel that JC Wings are feeling they have to react to the NG Light movement, but also now to the fact that HX Models exists and is doing the same thing. And we've got, after years and years and years of never seeing a 747 Classic, let alone the prototype, now we've got 3 different versions of the same model appearing, 4 if you count the future higher quality version of the NG release. So you're going to be swamped with choices for the 747 prototype coming soon. And a big driver of that is the emergence of this new brand, HX Models. There's one picture I've seen of the HX Models 747-100 sample, just the front end of the nose, and it looks pretty good. Again, I think that they've got a decent looking mold here, and also judging by this picture, and if looking at the left here, it looks like they may well end up having a flaps up and down version of this as well. So it looks like a strong contender when you take into account the issues NG have had with their 747-100, when you take into account that JC Wings presumably going to be using the old seamed Big Bird mold, coming along at HX Wings with a completely new mold, possibly with a flaps down version as well. That is quite sizable news. And although they've only made these 2 model announcements recently in 400 scale, there is a huge list of the SQ Wings side of the business, which is just announced in 200 scale. And if you look at this list of aircraft that they've announced for June, I mean, you've got well over 20 models here, how many, more than 30 actually, It's incredible, and a mix of types here: A380, 747, 787, 747 Classics. It's a lot of models. And you wonder where they've got all these new molds from for these, because I'm not sure they've made any in 200 scale previous. And again, I think that JC Wings would have something to say about this. So it's really, really kicking off, I would say. And this is a significant change in the scale. Okay, well, that is everything that I know about HX Wings at the moment. This new 747-8 freighter version, I believe, will be available for purchase very soon, if it's not already, from my hobby house and in China. It looks pretty decent. Arguable whether it's better than the NG or JC version, I don't know, but it looks pretty decent. Certainly HX Wings looks like a brand with a lot of possibilities and a lot of resources, and it is definitely going to cause stir in the hobby if it can keep on producing high quality models at substantially lower prices, all of which come with free stands. Obviously they need to get some outside China distribution partners, but I don't expect that to be a dramatic problem for them. So there's a lot to be interested in about what HX models are going to do in the future if they can survive. What's going to happen here over the next year or so? I don't know. Maybe this is a damp squib, but then again, maybe this is another NG-like appearance of a brand which then goes on to do something quite impressive. So only time will tell. Let's keep an eye out. Check out my channels, because I'll always try and keep you informed of what's going on in the scale. But for now, it's goodbye from me. Thanks very much.